Hi team, I hope you're all well. Today I am going to be recommending you some books that you can read in one sitting. So for me, one sitting would be one day essentially, and these are books that I have actually read in one sitting. Now I do a lot of audiobook reading, but I actually think that these books you could read in one sitting physically as well. They're not ridiculously long by any means. They're very fast paced. The plot of the story means that you get stuck right in and you cannot let these books go. So these are the books that I would recommend. I have a couple of fantasy, because I do find that with fantasy, obviously a lot of fantasy is quite chunky, but with fantasy, unless it's a novella, for example the Wayward Children series, obviously you can read those in a day. You could probably read the whole series in a day, quite frankly. They are novellas, so there is the obvious ones. Novellas, middle grade, are always very easy to read in a day. Manga, graphic novels and comics you can also read in a day, but these are books that are actual novels that I think are achievable in one sitting. So there is a lot of chunky fantasy. I don't read a lot of fantasy physically. A lot of my fantasy is done audibly because I get stuck on words a lot. I think it's because of my ADHD, but I don't know. So I can get stuck on the pronunciation of words a lot. I will sit there for a very long time trying to work out how to pronounce a word. So it takes me a very long time to physically read a fantasy book. That's why I audiobook. But these books are achieved both audibly and physically in one day, I reckon, in one sitting. And I have done so in multiple readathons, and also just because I picked it up and I was like, okay, let's see how far I can get in this today, come put it down, and finished it in a day. I was going to say it's not very often I do this. Recently it has been. I have been smashing my way through books recently, but yeah, so these are my one sitting book recommendations. As I say, I do have a couple of fantasy, I've got some romance, and then I've got some thrillers as well. I always find that thrillers are very easy to get through in a day, especially if it's fast paced. So easy to get through in a day. So we're going to start off with the couple of fantasy books that I do have. So I do have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I loved this book. This was so good, and I did get through it in a day if I remember correctly. If I didn't, I 100% think I could now. But this was really good. So this is set in Britain, and we are following Mika Moon, who is a witch. But she follows 3 very simple rules. Hide your magic, keep your head down, and stay away from other witches. She is part of, I suppose it's like a coven that get together every couple of months, and basically the head witch of this is telling the other witches that if you stay with other witches for too long, the magic is too powerful and it causes a lot of problems. So they aren't allowed to hang out with each other, etc, etc. Now, Mika kind of takes this whole witchery to another level. She has a YouTube channel in which she pretends to be a witch, which I think is fantastic. However, she then receives an unexpected message that asks her if she would go to Nowhere House, in which there are 3 young witches there who don't have any control of their magic. The person that's asked her to go there believes that she is in fact a witch, and they're asking her to teach them how to use their magic. So she makes the decision that she's going to do this. She ums and ahs about it. She's like, this isn't a good idea. There will be 4 witches here now, and we shouldn't be in close proximity for too long. However, the fact that these 3 witches are here themselves anyway, and they don't have any control of their magic, maybe it's worse if I don't stay. So she ends up going to Nowhere House, and she ends up teaching these young witches how to use magic. And then it turns out that she could have been lied to all of her life, and she's trying to get down to the bottom of this while teaching these 3 young witches how to use their magic, and also potentially falling in love at Nowhere House as well. And I really loved this story. It was very cozy, very perfect for this time of year, and it was just so easy to get through as well. It's quite fast paced. I liked the world building. I thought that it was really good. I really enjoyed the characters in this as well, and the relationships that they have with each other, and then also the relationship that builds in here as well, the romantic relationship. Just really, really loved it. Would recommend. Very easy to get through in a day. Next, we do have another witchy book, and it is The X Hex by Erin Sterling. I really enjoy this series. This is a duology. I don't know if there's going to be more in the series, but right now it's a duology, and I really, really enjoy this one. It is so much fun. It is very much a fantasy rom-com, and it is a lot of fun and very fast-paced. So in this one, we follow Vivian Jones, and 9 years ago, she accidentally hexed her ex-boyfriend. She was drunk and she did this hex. She didn't think it would come to fruition. Nothing happens for 9 years. And then Reese Penhallow, whose family kind of owns the place that Viv lives in, and they help, you know, breathe magic back into ley lines, etc., comes back to town. He is her ex-boyfriend, comes back to town, and it turns out that this hex may have stuck. He has become very unlucky. Once he gets back in town, he is ridiculously unlucky, even the smallest of things, and she is panicking. She's like, shit, this hex has worked, what am I going to do, etc, etc. She ends up having to recruit Reese's help to try and get this hex off of him. It's a second chance romance, which I don't usually go for, but I actually really enjoyed it in here. And in the second one, we follow Viv's cousin and Reese's brother. And it was really, they're just such a fun time, a very fun time. I really enjoy the magic in here. I love the small town vibes in here as well. This is a small town that basically lives and breathes Halloween, magic, witchery, etc, etc. However, the town is human, non-magic, and they don't know there are actual witches in town. So Viv runs this gorgeous tiny little shop in which she sells magical items that I don't think they're actually meant to have magic in them, but you know, crystals, cauldrons, things like that. And I just love that. I love the fact that it's it's very on the nose. There is a witch running a witchy shop that is meant to be for non-magic people, and they think they're just buying crystals and non-magic stuff when in fact it's a witch running the whole place. I love that. I think it's fantastic. I love the small town vibes. I really enjoy the characters. The book itself is hilarious, and I just had a fantastic time with this one. Very easy to get through. Okay, next we're going to go into some romance. You may predict some of these, I don't know, but the first one I do have is very much probably a prediction on some of y'all's list. It is Flawless by Elsie Silver. In general, the Chestnut Springs series is very fast paced. I've only read Flawless and Heartless, which is books 1 and 2, but so far I've read both of them in one sitting, in the space of approximately 4.5 hours. So these are very fast paced. They are romance, they're small town cowboy romances, and I love them so much. They're so, so good. So in this one we follow Summer and Rhett. Rhett is a professional bullfighter. However, once he gets in the press and he gets on camera and stuff, he starts getting himself in bother with some of the things he starts saying, and he gets himself in a bit of trouble. And his manager, who is Summer's dad, thinks that he might need some babysitting. So he ends up tasking Summer with the job of babysitting Rhett. Now these two don't really see eye to eye. They don't get on. This is very much so enemies to lovers. And it's just very, very good. I love the fact that we see so much of both of these characters. It is a very, like, I don't know, it drags up quite a few emotions. I had a couple tears in my eyes while reading this. I was laughing. It was really, really good, and it's so fast paced. I love the cowboy side of things, the small town side of things. It was really, really good. I loved Summer's dad as well in this. I thought he was hilarious, and I just had a fantastic time. And these books follow on from each other, so they're essentially like companion novels. So in Heartless, for example, we follow Cade and Willa. Willa is Summer's best friend. Cade and Rhett are friends or brothers, I can't remember, but yeah, they're essentially companion novels. I think they're brothers, and then the third one is Jasper, I think, or Jazz, and he is a friend of the family. I'm fairly certain that's the way it goes, but I really enjoy these books so much. Very fast paced. They have different things going on as well. This one is a single dad romance, and it's so good. Also in this one, I've said this a million times now and I'm going to keep saying it, but Cade Easton should be played, if there is ever a movie, someone for the love of God pick these up. If there's ever a movie, Cade Easton should be played by Cole Hauser. But Cole Hauser from Yellowstone specifically. Not Cole Hauser from anything else. Not Cole Hauser from Fast and Furious. Cole Hauser from Yellowstone. AKA Rip. He should be played by Rip. That's who he should be played by. I don't know. That's who I had in my head the whole time I was reading this. But they're very fast paced. Despite their size as well. Like, Heartless is a lot bigger, I think, than... Yeah, Heartless is well over 400 pages. This one is just under. So they're very fast paced. I got through both of them in around 4.5, 5 hours. It didn't take me long at all. Very fast paced, would recommend. Next, we do have one of my new favourite series on top of Chestnut Springs. We've got Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry, which is the first in the Eden series. This one, again, follows a family, and we are following Griff and also Willow in this one. Yeah, Willow. So Willow is new to the town of Quincy. Again, small town. She is the new chief of police in town. So she comes to town on her first night in. She ends up going to this bar and she ends up hooking up with this guy. So her thought process is that it's a bar outside of town. He's probably just traveling through, etc, etc. Next day, she goes into town to start her new job. It turns out her grandfather is the mayor, and a lot of people in town think she only got the position because of that. It's not the case. She was thoroughly gone through with, like everybody else was, and she was picked as being the best for the job. So she has her first day on the job with her grandfather, and she ends up meeting the Edens, who are this very large family in town who run a lot of the shops in town and bars and hotels and stuff, and they are also like the rich family in town. They have a farm, and she runs into Griffin, who is the man she slept with the night before, both of whom thought that the other one was just passing through town, and it turns out that's not the case. Neither of them are happy about the situation. Neither of them wanted to get tangled up with someone in town, so they're both pissed off about it, and they're both shitty with each other about it for a while. And then a young girl ends up being found dead on Indigo Ridge, which is on the Eden's farm and on their land. And Willow is concerned about this because it's straight up apparently a suicide, and she's concerned about this because when she starts looking into it, turns out this has been going on for a couple of years now. There's been a couple of suicides every few years, and she's not happy about it. Something very off is going on. It's the same place every time, the same general age of people, and she's not happy about it, so she starts looking into it. Griff keeps telling her to leave it alone. Just leave it alone. They have this agreement, they'll sleep together but not get involved. He's like, just leave it alone. It's just suicides. Leave it alone. No one's happy to answer any questions. And then it all becomes unraveled. And the thing I love the most about these books is that they're romance books, but they have the element of a murder mystery in it. Well, not all of them actually. They have the element of a mystery going on in the background. And what I love the most about them is, despite how small they are, because they're not that large, 320 pages long, Devney Perry manages to pack a punch. The romance doesn't overtake the thriller element in this. The thriller element doesn't take away from the romance element. They work so well together, and I think the talent you must need to have in order to be able to do that is phenomenal. And I really thoroughly enjoyed this so much. I think romantic suspense is like one of my new favourite subgenres of romance now, and I really enjoy it. I just love the extra element of something suspenseful happening in the background. I really enjoyed these characters. I loved them so much. And the other thing I love about this as well is in the last chapter you kind of get the introduction to the next characters in the next book. So I have so far read Indigo Ridge and Juniper Hill. I am planning on reading Garnet Flats in November, but I just love the introduction to the next set of characters that happens very subtly towards the end of the book. It's so good. I love the characters. I love the suspensefulness. I love the fact that the minute you pick this book up, you are hooked. You cannot put it down. You need to know what's happening next. You need to know where it's going. You need to know what happens at the end. They are so good. This book and Juniper Hill was literally stuck to my fingers. The only reason that I put them down was to go to the loo, to make a drink, to make some food. That was it. I wasn't putting it down for anybody, and they were so good. 5-star reads, both of them for me. Very, very exciting, and I'm so hyped to continue on with the series. Okay, next we do have the Wild series by K.A. Tucker. I love this series. This series isn't companion novels, it is a series where we just follow the same characters, and it's so good. We followed Calla and also Jonah. When Calla was younger, her mum disappeared from a small town in Alaska with her, leaving her dad behind, and they went to Boston. Her mum has now remarried, and she loses her job, and I think maybe her apartment, maybe just her job, in one day, and she ends up going home back to her mum and her stepdad. Her stepdad is like a psychologist, so she's always talking to him and opening up to him. And she then gets this phone call from this mysterious woman basically saying, Calla, your dad has asked if you would come and see him. He's really sick and he's dying and he would love to see you. He hasn't seen her since she was maybe 8 years old. She's now an adult. Oh, sorry, she was 2. She wasn't even 2. And now she's 26. So she's getting this phone call from this mysterious woman. Your dad is dying and he would like to see you. Can you come and see him? She's and ahhing, and her stepfather's like, would you regret it if you don't go? And she's like, yeah, I think I would. And he's like, listen, you've got no job. This is the perfect time. Why don't you just go and see him for a couple of weeks? So she makes the decision to go and visit her dad. And when she gets there, Jonah is there to pick her up from the airport. So her dad basically runs this very successful company of planes that obviously bring stuff into Alaska, take stuff out, etc. Things like that. And he never wanted to really leave Alaska, which is why her mum and dad ended up splitting. Her mum couldn't deal with the small town, etc. And that's why they ended up splitting. She ends up landing, and Jonah is there to take her then on to the last leg of her journey. For some reason, he's really fucking shitty with her. Like, really shitty with her. And I think he has it in his head that this selfish bitch, she never once visited her father, and now all of a sudden he's dying, she wants to come and see him. She must think she's going to get something out of him. And that's his thought process. Jonah has known Calla's dad for a very long time and kind of sees him almost like a father figure. So anyway, she gets to Alaska, sees her dad, and he's no idea she's coming. Not a clue. The woman that's asked her to come is a very good friend of her dad's, and she was like, he's gonna hate it if he doesn't see her before he passes, blah blah blah. She makes the decision herself. This story essentially then goes on to follow Calla and Jonah with their romance, follow also Calla and her dad building their relationship back up, and it's just so good. I really enjoy it. Again, the small town vibes. I think small towns are becoming like my new favourite thing. The small town vibes, I really enjoyed this. It was very quick to get through. I was very intrigued. I loved the story. Running Wild, the last one, was actually my favourite, I think, in the whole series. But I just really, really enjoyed this. There are 3 books and a novella in the whole series, and it's really, really good. And usually I don't enjoy continuing to follow the same couple in the second book. I always get to the end of a book and go, I want to know what happens with them next. But I've started to realise that I don't necessarily enjoy that. However, with this series, it never got to a point. It did a little bit, I suppose, in the second one, but they are still very fast paced. But by the third one, I was obsessed again, and I just wanted to know everything. I think because they had so much going on in their lives that we could just enjoy continuing to follow them and know more about it. It wasn't the boring side of settling down and nothing interesting is then going on. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. Next, we do have another recent read for me, and it is Savage Land by Stacey Marie Brown. I read this in one sitting. Another book that I just couldn't put down. I was so intrigued and I was so anxious going into this because I had been told that I probably wouldn't enjoy this one, and I ended up loving it. It was so good. I don't even think I was halfway through when I bought the second one, Wildlands, and I'm so excited to pick that one up. But this one, basically, it's a fantasy romance. It's set in Budapest, and 20 years ago the barrier between Earth and Otherworld fell in the Fae Wars, and now Budapest is kind of like split in two between humans and the Fae. We are following a human girl called Brexley who is 19 years old, and it has been orphaned due to the war, and she ends up becoming the ward of the king and queen of the human side, and she is in love with their son. And she ends up, basically, because of the position that she is in, she's constantly looking for adrenaline and different ways of kind of breaking the rules but not breaking them too bad. She ends up basically robbing the trains that go from the human lands to the Fey lands and back, etc., that are transporting medication, things like that. She ends up robbing them and then selling the stuff on the black market to help people that actually need the stuff and that it's not getting to. However, one day she finds herself on the train and she ends up getting stuck on the train. She doesn't get out in time and she ends up finding herself in this prison in which there are all different kinds of people in there. There are fae, there are shapeshifters, there are demons, there are humans, etc. And she ends up finding herself stuck in this prison, and she ends up meeting Warwick Farkas. I always forget to pronounce his last name. Warwick Farkas. She kind of becomes not obsessed, but just very intrigued by this man. He is a beautiful man and she's very intrigued by him and she wants to know his story and what's going on, etc. And it just kind of goes from there. I loved this so much. I was so intrigued to find out what was going on next. The world building wasn't at its best, the writing wasn't at its best, but what I will say, very much so like Zodiac Academy, the writing is done in such a way that it's very addictive and you need to know what's going on next. So it's not a masterpiece by any means, but it's incredibly addictive. Again, a little bit like crack. I don't think there's as much crack in these pages as there is in Zodiac Academy, but there is crack in the pages, I'm sure of it. It's really, really good. I had a fantastic time. The sexual tension between some of the characters is insane, and I'm so excited to continue on with this series. So yeah, one sitting, 100%. Then we do get into the thrillers. This video is going way longer than I thought it was going to. First, we do have 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. I read this in one sitting, but I kind of wish I'd done it in a different way. Someone else recommended doing this book to me in a different way, and I kind of wish I'd done that now. And I may try and do another reread maybe next year once the story has left my head, because this happens regularly. I might try again. But essentially we're following 6 friends who go on a road trip for spring break, and their RV breaks down in the middle of nowhere and they realise it isn't an accident. And then there's basically like an 8-hour countdown in which there is a sniper picking them off and they need to try and get out of there. Now this is done the way that I would recommend reading this in one sitting. It's done in such a way that there are times on this. Now it will not take you 8 hours to get through this book. It starts at 10 PM, it finishes at 6 AM, and I would recommend reading each section for each time within that time zone so you get a feel of how long this actually takes, how long everything happens in. Obviously it's not going to take you an hour to read from 10 to 11. Maybe it does, I don't know. It depends on how fast you read. It's only 36 pages, but some of the other sections are a bit longer then. But it's very good, very interesting, and I really enjoyed this one. I think I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It was great. To be fair, anything by Holly Jackson I reckon you can read in a day. She's done the Good Girls Guide to Murder series as well, and that one was fantastic. I reckon you could read those in a day. Maybe not the last one, it is quite a bit longer, but the first 2 definitely. They were really interactive, very good reads. But yeah, this one was really good, and if I was to go back and read this again, or even read it for the first time, I would do it in such a way that I do it throughout the night or even throughout the day and do like 10 AM till 6 PM rather than 10 PM to 6 AM, although it would add to the vibes. But I would read each chapter along with the time zone so that I can get a feel of how long this went on for and how intense it could be and how stressful, etc. But yeah, this was really good. Definitely can be done in one sitting. Next we do have Sadie by Courtney Summers. Now, if you are going to pick this one up, I would highly recommend the audiobook for several reasons, but I haven't read this book for several years. It's been a long time since I've read this book and I really want to give it a reread. So we're following Wes McRae, who gets a desperate phone call for him to try and locate 19-year-old Sadie. He's not really interested in the story until he finds out that the last time Sadie was seen, she was fleeing her home in which her little sister was murdered in. So he then wants to start getting involved in this. Now, Wes McRae is a podcaster. I think he's a podcaster anyway. Radio personality even. And this is done in such a way that there is a little bit of mixed media in here. And the audiobook is so good at bringing this element in and heightening the intensity and the stress, etc., that's going on in this book. Is very, very good. You do get elements told in such a way where there are interviews between Wes McRae and other people that saw things. He is like literally on the move trying to find out what's going on and where Sadie is, and then you do get chapters from Sadie as well that kind of start bringing the story forward, and then more podcast elements. And the audiobook is very, very good for this. It's a very emotional read. I was crying by the end of this book. It's really, really good. I desperately want to give it a reread. I really need to find some time to reread some of my favourite books. Maybe I'll do a vlog with that, and this one will definitely be in there. But I loved this. It was absolutely fantastic. I'm hoping that it holds up. I know a lot of people still recommend this book even to this day. I'm hoping that it will still live up for me and what I thought of it in the moment as well. But yeah, I 100% would recommend the audiobook for this, but it's not too long if you do decide to physically read it. It's very easy to get through in one sitting, and I would recommend. Next we do have The Butcher and the Wren by Aliana Urquhart. This one was so good. It's not even too long. I'm very excited for the next one to come out, but I really enjoyed this one. This is a serial killer cop kind of story, and it's really, really good. I believe Elena Urquhart is a podcast host. She's co-host of Morbid, a true crime podcast. I know Becca listens to Morbid. I haven't listened to it before. I listened to Case File, which is true crime podcast. And this one is following she's not a cop, she's a forensic pathologist, Dr. Wren Muller. And then we are also following the serial killer as well, and I think we actually follow both of them in this story as well. Now, for some strange reason, this serial killer's going round, and Wren has a feeling that she has some kind of connection to this serial killer, and she can't figure out what it is. And throughout the book, we're trying to figure out what the process is, why she has this connection with this serial killer, what is going on exactly. And it's so interesting. I really enjoyed this one. Again, it's short, so it is very easy to get through in one sitting, but I thought that this one was really, really good. 242 pages. I thought this was really, really good, and it's got me so intrigued for the second book. I can't wait to pick it up. I had a fantastic time. I do love it when we have a thriller where we follow the serial killer as well. I really enjoy that. I have a great time with it. The Mindfuck series, for example, so good. I really wanted to put that on here, but I wasn't sure whether or not you could actually get through the whole series in one sitting. It's a selection of novellas, so maybe you could, but yeah, the Mindfuck series was fantastic, but this was really, really good, and I would recommend. And then last but by no means least, one of my favourite thrillers of the year, I read in one sitting. I read this in approximately, again, probably about 4.5 hours. I started it pretty late in the evening. I was picking my parents up early hours of the morning, and I needed to keep myself awake. So I was like, okay, let's just see how far I can get through this book before I pick my parents up. I ended up sitting. I started it. I don't even think I got up for a week. I started it and finished it literally in one sitting. I did not move. I couldn't put it down. I was texting back and forth with my friend who had read it the night before, and it was so good. I loved it. Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This was fantastic. I absolutely loved this. We're following a woman who in late October, she's up late keeping an eye out for her son coming back from wherever he's been out with his friends, and he's late, so that's why she's up keeping an eye out for him. And then she spots him come down the street, and she's like, great, okay, he's coming home, at least he's fine. And then right outside their door, a man is walking towards him, and her son ends up stabbing this man and killing him. And he ends up, I don't know, the whole thing is shocking. He ends up being taken down to the station. His parents go with him, and this woman, she cannot understand what she's just witnessed from her window. She's so confused. She can't figure it out. So they're all down at the station. Her and her husband end up coming home. Obviously her son has to stay at the station. And then she wakes up in the morning and she's very confused. Her son's at home. She's really confused. She can't figure it out. She's like, why are you at home? What is going on? We were at the station last night. Why are you not still at the station? He's like, Mum, what the fuck are you talking about? No, I wasn't. What do you mean? Anyway, she realizes that it's the day before the day it happened. So she's gone back in time. And then she wakes up the next day and it's a day before that. And as this goes on and on until she starts jumping even bigger sections. So it won't just be the day before, it will be weeks before, it might be months before, and then it's a couple of years before. And she's trying to figure out what is going on, but the whole point of it is that she tries to figure out the reason why her son killed this man, what association he has with her son, and exactly what brought all of this about. And it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. You get to a point where you're going through the book and you're like, wait, how many days back are we now? And how many months back? How many years back? And you're like, how far back is this going to go? And we also follow the POV, so we follow her POV, but we also follow the POV of Ryan, who is a cop. And I think he's a cop if I remember correctly. And we're trying to figure out his role in all of this as well. And it's just fascinating. I had the best time trying to figure it out. I was messaging back and forth with Caitlin. Eventually she went to sleep, but I still sent her the messages so that in the morning she could read them and see my thought process as I was reading the book. And I think that really kind of heightened my enjoyment, my reading enjoyment of this as well, because I love it when you have a theory and you need to tell somebody, but I can't tell the camera because it's a spoiler, so I need to tell somebody. And I just had the best time messaging back and forth with her and being like, okay, this is my theory now. No, wait, I changed my mind, this is my theory now. It was just so good. If any of you want to read this and text me your theories, feel free to do so. Drop in my DMs anytime, it's fine. But yeah, it was such a quick read, and I know it looks chunky, but the writing in here is absolutely ginormous and it's so fast paced. You really, once you start it, you need to know what's happening. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It's one of my favourite thrillers of the year and I had a fantastic time with it, and I 100% would recommend picking this one up. It was so good, very intense. So yeah. So that is all of the books that I have read in one sitting and would recommend to you as being books that you can read in one sitting. Obviously, it does depend on your reading pace. I have read all of these books audibly, but I think that I'm a very slow physical reader, which is why I do a lot of audiobooking. But I think that I could get through these books physically in one sitting. Which is why I'm confident enough to recommend them to you as books you could get through in one sitting as well. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you would like any other recommendation videos like this, because this was actually a suggestion from one of you that I do a books you can read in one sitting video. So let me know in the comments down below if you've got any other recommendation videos that I could do like this, because I'm always looking for sit down video ideas. I'm terrible at coming up with ideas like this myself. So let me know if you've got any other ideas in the description box down below. If there's any specific recommendations you might want from me, etc. And I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye for now.